Good morning, class. This is the lesson for, I don't know what it's for. It's for December 5th. Sorry about that. We are in Exodus, and we will be looking at a very familiar story or narrative today regarding Moses' encounter with the burning bush. And actually, we're going to start right off in Scripture today in Exodus chapter 3. We will be basically in verses 1 to 22. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. So from age infancy to age 40, Moses was the prince of Egypt. Remember that narrative of his mother, his Hebrew mother, putting him in a basket and sending him up the Nile River, where he was found by Pharaoh's daughter and brought into the royal household and basically raised as an Egyptian prince. And he did that until he was 40 years old and had a run in with the law, I guess you would say, when he tried to defend a Jewish person that was being beaten. and and had to escape. And so from age 40 to 80, he was the shepherd of his father-in-law's sheep in Midian. Quite a come down, I guess you might say, from the prince of Egypt to a shepherd of his father-in-law's sheep, not even his own sheep. Now he's led this flock to the Mount Horeb, which I guess you might say is on the backside of the wilderness. Um, it's a parched, dry, obscure part of the wilderness. And this is where Moses meets God. So we're going to pick up again in chapter 3, verses 2 to 5. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. And then he said, Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. You know, a burning bush may not have been an unusual sight to see in the desert. However, a burning bush that does not get consumed, does not burn up, that would be an extremely unusual sight. And that is why Moses came nearer to find out why this bush was not actually burning up. Whenever you see the angel of the Lord, the phrase the angel of the Lord in the scripture in the Old Testament, it always refers to God himself. It's an appearance of God. And here we see the invisible God making himself known to Moses in a visible way, not in a human way, but in a visible way that was certainly undeniable as being exceptional and miraculous. The burning bush is not an accident. Um, God led the people through the wilderness in a column of fire, did he not? God later descended on the same mountain in fire, did he not? Fire, I believe, is very significant when it comes to God. It illustrates his glory and his power, and also for God's holiness, his perfection. Um, why does God tell Moses to remove his sandals? Was the ground itself holy? No, no, no. The ground was not holy, but it was holy because God was present there. Wherever God is present, it makes that presence holy. Think about that. Wherever God is holy ground. So Moses had to step away from the holy ground, but he was still allowed to be near to God. God wanted him near. He just wanted him near in a respectful manner. Verses 6, picking up in verse 6. And he, God, said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. And then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings. So God, first of all, identifies himself to Moses as the God of not only his father, therefore the Jewish family, but of Abram, more specifically of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those are the men that God made the promise to. God was not only unaware of their oppression, but he was intimately aware of what they were enduring. Notice there are three ways that God makes it plain that he is not ignorant of what's going on with Moses' people, so to speak. I have seen their affliction, I heard their cry, and I know the sufferings that they are suffering at the hands of their taskmasters. He makes it pretty plain, doesn't he? And then God continues, and I have come down to deliver them out of the land of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. So God makes it plain that he is aware of the oppression that the people are under and that he is coming down. I have come down. This is a deliberate effort on God's part to not only rescue his people from the hand of the Egyptians, but to bring them into another land that is perfectly suited for them. In essence, that God has prepared for them. So the plan has two parts: rescue the Jews from the Egyptians and relocate them into the promised land. Eventually, the Son of God would do the same, wouldn't he? He would come down to rescue his people from the penalty and the power of sin and relocate them, I guess I should say us, relocate us to a better place with him, free from the presence of sin. The Egyptians are us. Both of us need rescuing. God has rescued both, and he has taken them to the promised land, and he will take us to the promised land, the land that we will enjoy with him. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So here God is appointing Moses to be the human leader, basically a mediator between the people, and first of all, between a mediator between God and the Egyptians, and God and the people, the Israelites. And Moses is going to be the mediator between those two groups. Jesus was the mediator. He is the mediator. He is our advocate. He sits at the right hand of the Father. He's the high priest. A few weeks ago, we talked about Jesus being both the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords and the high priest. And he fills all of those functions. And he is the mediator between God's people and God himself. Going to verse 11 of chapter 3, but Moses said to God, but Moses, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? But God said, but I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me, they will ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered through all generations. Moses had some questions, didn't he? Who am I? Basically, that's like, you mean me? Who am I that you should choose me for this mission? I mean, think about it. Where had Moses been for the last 40 years? Shepherding his father's sheep. From God's point of view, perhaps that would be good training. Moses, I'm sure he didn't see that at all. But what is God's response to him? God says, I am who I am. Actually, he says to him in response to that, um, but I will be with you. God says, but I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you, that you will come and bring the people here and worship me on this mountain. So what does God say? Hey, Moses, it's not about you. It's about me. I think God could say that many, many times. It's not about you. And I am not dependent on your power and strategies and plans, Moses. This is not something that you need to figure out on yourself, Moses. No, I am going to be with you the whole time. I will be with you, and that is enough. And then the second question Moses asks is, who shall I say sent me? And God identifies himself as the I am, the only eternal one, the one that has always existed, that has no beginning and no end, the I am, the promiser who has proved that he is trustworthy. Verse 16 to 18. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have observed you and what has been done to you in Egypt, and I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. And they will listen to your voice. You and the elders of Israel, go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. And now please let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. So this passage, that passage I just read, is not included in your reading, but I think it was kind of important for us to continue with the narrative and not just skip over it. So God tells Moses to tell the elders of Israel what he had experienced at the burning bush, and they will believe him. God assures Moses that they will believe him. So Moses plus the elders, their assignment is to go to Pharaoh and tell him that the God of the Israelites has commanded that they go 3 days' journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifice to their God, and that he is to allow this to happen. Actually, that was not a terribly unusual request. It may seem like that was outrageous for them to even request that, but it was not an unusual request, and it was usually granted for indentured servants or slaves to make to go ahead and make that journey into the wilderness for the purpose of offering sacrifice to their God and then returning back to the life of slavery. God is not under the illusion that Pharaoh will respond favorably. After all, there are a lot of Jews in Egypt, like over 2 million. They have indeed multiplied and filled the earth, or at least filled a good part of Egypt. God knows that he will not, that his heart will be hardened over and over. That did not come as a surprise to God. But that in his rejection, God's power would be made manifest. Remember, God will use whoever he wills for whatever his purpose might be, whether they are a believer or an unbeliever. And it is in the hardening of Pharaoh's heart, which Pharaoh did, that God's power was exhibited. And so that was seen by the idolatrous Egyptians, but more importantly, it was seen by the oppressed Israelites. So when the time came for them to leave, they had seen sign after sign after sign that their God was way more powerful than any Pharaoh. Um, Picking up in verse 19. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all the wonders that I will do in it. After that, he will let you go. Isn't it wonderful that God, how gracious of God, to let Moses in on the plan? Not just go ahead and tell Pharaoh this and we'll see what happens. No, God knew exactly what was going to happen, but he reveals that to Moses. That doesn't change what the instructions are that he gave him, but at least he does let him know that it's not going to make any difference, but he's still to go ahead and do it. And I will give this people favor in the sight of Egyptians. And when you go, you shall not go empty, but each woman shall ask of her neighbor, and any woman who lives in her house, for silver and gold jewelry, and for clothing. And you shall put them on your sons and on your daughters, so you shall plunder the Egyptians. This is an amazing prophecy that not only would Pharaoh eventually let his people go, but the Egyptian people themselves would fund their journey. And more importantly, they would provide the materials to build the tabernacle where God would dwell among his people. We know at the cross that the enemy was plundered, so to speak. Satan's power over sin, his power over death, power over the grave is gone. His camp is empty. We are rescued from Satan's clutches, and we are made spiritually alive in Jesus Christ. We are rescued, just as the Jews were rescued from the oppression of the Egyptians that they had endured for generations and generations. So are we rescued from the oppression of sin and the power of sin and the obligation to give in to our temptations. A familiar passage, but it is kind of instrumental as we continue through the book of Exodus in this new second book. God bless you. See you next week.